You don't need to go far away even to after death to go to here and see what it looks like. It's like right there in North Korea.
Okay, hey Laowinners, it's Laowinner6 here with another video. We have a very special guest today, and actually, to tell you the truth, a lot of my audience requested that I got a hold of you. Very, very big interest in your channel right now. I can tell you that.
Oh, thank you.
Huge interest. But before we even get into any sort of questions, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, my name is Yeonmi Park. I'm a North Korean defector, human rights activist. I was born in the end of 1993 after Soviet Union collapsed. So North Korea, in the northern part of North Korea, and because of the Soviet Union collapse, North Korea will stop providing public rations. So famine became everyday life for everyone in North Korea. Therefore, when I was 13, I crossed a frozen river to China. And from there, I was human trafficked. I was sold as a sexual slave. And 2 years after, I found my mom back in China. And with her, we crossed the Gobi Desert to Mongolia from China. And then went to South Korea. After being in South Korea for 5 years, I decided to become a human rights activist. So I wrote a book. And that brought me to America a few years ago.
Great. And you now have a YouTube channel as well.
Mm-hmm. I only began about a month ago, and so many people told me about you, and like, you gotta see Matt. I was like, okay, I will. And I'm so honored to be on your channel. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. And yeah, your channel's very new, so obviously when people were reaching out, I was like, wow, an actual North Korean defector that ended up in China. This could be quite interesting. And I pretty much watched your entire channel within 2 days. So it was,
oh my gosh.
it was fascinating stuff. Particularly because both my business partner and I, when we were shooting our documentary Conquering Northern China, we ended up in the North Korean border region of China. And I can tell you, it was really hectic. It was a different vibe up there. After being in China for 10 years, being in that area, it felt there's a lot of heavy presence. It felt very like a restricted type area. And we were fascinated to learn that the people there, the Chinese people there, were actually Korean speakers or Korean people on that side of the border. So we learned a lot while filming the documentary, but we also had a chance to look inside of North Korea from the other side. And before we get into a lot of stuff, I wanted to ask you, like, the particular region that we were in, there was like a fairly built up Chinese city that we were in of Chinese Koreans. And we were looking across the river and seeing these very thin, almost emaciated looking North Korean people amongst this village that almost looked like it wasn't real. These buildings that they had set up they're just empty, right? And the only thing real about it was there was a couple guard posts with North Korean soldiers there. Can you kind of like explain what maybe goes down on the Chinese North Korean border region for North Korean people?
Yeah, so I think I saw the episode you did with your team in China, and I saw the whole thing. It was very impressive. And you're so brave because, like some journalists who went that close to the border, they got captured by North Korean soldiers.
Sure. Yeah, we were worried about that.
I know. I was like, what is he doing? I was really like worried, like what's gonna happen. Thankfully, you came out safely, but even the part that you saw, you thought it was a ghost town and so unbelievably poor and oppressed. That is actually where North Korea were doing their best to make it nicer for foreigners to see. So all this part that China can see, looking towards the border towns, are unbelievably hard to get a permit for even North Koreans to enter. So even people from Pyongyang, they really have to work hard to get a permit to enter that border town because there's always risk of defection. And if you live in the border town, then like even going to that river that you saw, it wasn't free. The guards, or like we have times that we need to go to river because we don't have running water at home. We need to bring the water to drink. We have to wash our clothes, and it's almost like curfew for us to even enter that river.
Sure. So when we were seeing people go down to the river to get water or to move logs and stuff, that was like a certain time they were allowed to do that. That's interesting. I remember on the Chinese side, there was all these signs, and it was like, don't feed the North Koreans, don't let them stay at your
Yeah.
house. So defection is like a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
If a North Korean person was to defect in that area, would they stay in that Chinese town, or would they immediately move on? Like, for example, what happened with your situation?
So in that town is very dangerous to be in because there's a lot of searches going on to catch North Korean defectors. So my case, as soon as I crossed that frozen river, the first thing I was seeing was my mom being raped in front of me. And then they told us like they had to move us right away because we are gonna get caught. And then after that, they were selling us to another human trafficker inner China around that like Shenyang, like Dongbei the area, and they were selling like me for less than $300 and my mom for like $65. But other defectors like us who were being sold, they usually try to go find a door to go to those like ethnic Koreans' houses to get a food, but they didn't let these North Koreans in. And a lot of times, I don't know, you heard that like back in days in America, they were like slave hunters. Now they are defector hunters in China. If you report on defector, you catch one, you get money from the government.
Okay, so you're compensated for finding North Korean defectors.
Yeah. So there are tons of people looking for us in that region.
How complicit is like the Chinese government in this whole human trafficking thing? Because if there's people out there looking for defectors to get rewarded to put back, why is there such a big illicit trade? Like, for example, the tragedy that you and your mother had to deal with. Why is this such a flourishing industry if the government is cracking down in China so hard on this?
I think because they, in a way, they do catch us. They really do their best to catch us, but also China is really huge, and the market that they demanding these sexual slaves are so huge. Like as you know, there are like over 30 million Chinese men cannot find their wives due to the one-child policy, and these men are so desperate. And I think these days are very, very hard to be hiding in China. Because after Xi Jinping, he actually checks even ID when you take the bus.
Right.
So it used to be they only checking the ID when you are taking the train.
Sure.
But now even on the bus, even taxis have like stop points checking your IDs. So it became really hard for defectors to hide in China.
I remember, I think you put out a video not that long ago, basically insinuating that without China propping up North Korea, then it would potentially collapse under that current regime. Is that true?
Oh yeah, I think China is responsible for North Korea's dictatorship for 100%. There's no question about that. I think what people don't get is often, North Korean Kim Jong-un is bad. No, actually, Xi Jinping is worse. The Chinese Communist Party is worse because they enable this dictatorship. They are sponsoring it and they are maintaining it. We do because of sanctions, North Korea cannot have any trades with other nations. And the sanctions doesn't affect like those daily life things. They affect the luxury goods that are going to Kim Jong-un and affecting them to build more nukes. It's like really starving the regime. But China provides all of that in the side and maintaining this dictatorship for their sake.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense to me. So your family has a history with the whole black market thing. To what extent is that just being is the government just looking away from all this now? Like allowing capitalism basically to happen?
It's so in a way that it's such a bizarre situation that North Korea is in, right? That the regime is, they start as like communism and socialism. They change the, bit, but still that kind of system where the government controls everything.
Sure.
What it became is that only the people who is next to Kim Jong-un, who is like loyal to Kim Jong-un, are being benefited. So the division between rich and the poor is so much greater. And therefore, the people who have power in Pyongyang, they don't need to pay taxes in North Korea. This is the best country to be in as a billionaire.
Sure.
You don't pay taxes.
Right.
And if you have a connection, you can do anything you want. You can sell people, you can do any crime. North Korea, that's why they make, meth and heroin and all those drugs and selling them. They make these missiles selling them. That's how they make money. So yes, black market is thriving in the higher level and the lower level. But when it comes to lower levels, people still don't have much that saying in it. And I remember when I was a child, like the regime says like, oh, today's you cannot go to market, and like, oh, today's you just have to end by 2 p.m. So it's not like us, dominating it. It's like regime still controls like pretty much 100% of the whole aspect of this marketization. But it is way looser than before, because my father's case, he was sent to labor prison camp for more than 10 years for selling like clocks, dried fish, rice, and then later like copper or silver, and those things that we just hear every day we buy.
I mean, to me, there's a lot of parallels to the way China worked, in that like they were very apprehensive to let market capitalism in. Then when they did, they still had an authoritarian government that controlled the everyday daily life from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And then the market kind of took over. But you're saying in North Korea, it's still very much 100%. The government is in control of everything.
Yeah, very, very much. Because, in North Korea, there's no freedom of movement within even North Korea. So even in order to start a revolution, you cannot go to next town without permit.
Sure.
It's like, how do you really do anything there?
Right. I understand. So when you were in North Korea, what was the vision of life in China or in the U.S. or in the rest of the world before you were able to kind of consume any sort of outside media?
So, everybody's like in North Korea has a 3 big different like caste system depending on your family status in the party. And then within that three caste system, there are like 50 different subcategories of classes. So it's the most unequal society you can find in the world.
Sure.
Even though it's supposedly socialist paradise, nobody's equal.
Right.
So in that case, everybody's education level is very different.
Right.
I was more or less average person in the countryside, and if you're top elite like Kim Jong-un's getting educated in Switzerland, a lot of top elites go to like abroad to get educated, but like normal people, they don't even know what passport is. My case, like I didn't even see the map of the world.
Right.
And I didn't even know that there were like different races. In school, they didn't tell us that we were Asians.
Wow.
They were telling us that we were Kim Il-sung race.
Wow.
So I thought I was Kim Il-sung race, and our calendar doesn't begin when Jesus Christ was born.
Sure.
Our calendar begins when first Kim Il-sung was born. It's like Juche-won, and now it's like a Juche-109 in North Korea. So our calendar is different, our like number is different, and our race is a Kim Il-sung race. So I had no clue what to expect, and only thing that I was learning from the government was, the Western society is so corrupt and so bad that everybody wants to be like North Korea and come to North Korea and worships our, Kims.
Right. And to what extent do you think that's changed nowadays? Has that changed at all just because of the reality of what people can consume now?
I think this through China, this smuggling outside of information going in. And I think in my case, I did watch movie Titanic, and that really gave me some taste of freedom, because I never seen a movie that was made for love story. In North Korea, no book, no songs, nothing is about human stories. It is all about propaganda. But a lot of people do know the rest of the world is not as oppressive and not like that. But I don't think that they understand the extent of prosperity that we have here. The extent of prosperity that when you tap the water, the warm water and cold water comes. We have like 24 hours electricity. I don't think people know that fully yet.
Even China would look like a paradise, because at that point, it doesn't matter about political freedom or freedom of speech or anything. At that point, it's about, are you full? Can you get full, right?
I didn't even know the word like freedom when I was a kid.
Sure, right. So I think that's a huge difference in something like a Chinese defector or something that already has some sort of semblance of wealth and what they need, and then go on to practice that freedom of speech or cause a movement or do whatever. But to the extent of the brainwashing, what makes you different? What made you different to want to completely abandon this situation versus someone that might be like, I think North Korea is the only place in the world. I buy into the propaganda. What separates you from somebody that's like, I'll just deal with it. I'm going to stay home, stay back?
Yeah, so the thing is that when I was escaping at 13, it wasn't like I was looking at the map of the world and looking where I'm going or not. It was just pure hunger. And luckily I was being on the border town of North Korea. And as you were there, right, at nights, you see that North Korea is dark, complete in darkness. And at nights, I could see the lights coming from China. And I heard these like rumors in our neighborhood saying that some dogs in China eat rice. And I was thinking, that's impossible. How can on earth dog eat rice? Like humans in North Korea cannot even like eat enough like potatoes. And I think, and I was seeing those lights in China, and you see those like highways in North Korea and China made those cars going by. I never seen those cars going by in North Korea. So that's why when I thought, if I go where the lights were, I might find some bowl of rice. And that's when I was risking my life to escape. It wasn't like, I'm gonna abandon the system, none of that. Like, those, like, even the defection or being rebellious to regime wasn't even coming to my mind then.
I think it's fascinating because I think a lot of people have this, especially from an American lens or like a Western lens, it's like, oh, these defectors are just like champions of freedom. They're just trying to find a more free society. And that's admirable to think that. But desperation is a different motivation, right?
Yeah.
And that's a more powerful motivation than anything.
Yeah.
I think that's what happens with a lot of countries that have gotten past the poverty level of North Korea but still have the authoritarian leadership. It's difficult to move past that when everybody's full, right?
Yeah. Everybody's content.
Right.
You know, like look at China now. They are just so content. Like we are not starving anymore. Who cares? I have freedom of speech. I'm not starving.
Sure. But that's the general populace, right? And that means that all the other voices are subdued. They're pushed down.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous thing to me. Actually, to go back on the whole like North Korean propaganda, I've been kind of experimenting with TikTok as a joke to see how quickly I get banned. By posting, just to see like if I post my YouTube content, how quickly they're going to ban me. But I've seen a couple North Korean TikTok channels pop up.
You have?
Yeah, I have. I can actually send you some. But they're obviously, I can see right through it. It's obviously someone in the government that's allowed to walk around with a cell phone and show how amazing everything is, right?
Wow.
This sort of soft power propaganda is something I see out of China. And only as someone that's lived in China that long, I can see through it. Because a lot of people get tricked in America.
Yeah, a lot of Western like tourists going to North Korea, to Pyongyang, and they say, oh, I have been to karaoke. I was staying at the hotel. I had so much food. Nobody's starving. Everyone's happy. And the same thing now, like on YouTube and even Facebook, the armies of North Korean hackers are really, that is like the next revenue stream for the regime. Kim Jong-un like built, Silicon Valley of North Korea and Pyongyang to raise these hackers and steal money, steal bitcoins, and do all these things like, on TikTok, YouTube, what was that channel called? Like Echoes of Truth. It's so sad that a lot of extreme left buy those ideas, and because a lot of people who are Marxists, Maoists, Leninists, they oppose the USA and they view North Korean regime as some kind of their allies, and they're willing to defend them even though in the face of like fakeness or things lie. And that's why it's so scary that North Korean regime doesn't just brainwash North Koreans. They are also trying to brainwash all of us.
Sure. This is where I think me and you are very much in line, because it's terrifying to see people in free countries, let's just use America as an example, to see them worship regimes. And for me, it's China, to worship a regime that would take away that freedom to say that very thing, to defend a regime where if they were part of that regime, they wouldn't even be able to speak positively or negatively about it anyway, right? So they're championing and celebrating something in a country that gave them that right. It's a terrifying trend. What would you say to someone that looks up to authoritarian regimes as a North Korean defector yourself?
Please go to North Korea and let's bring a North Korean here for your spot. Like, can we trade them? Seriously, there are so many people risking, like, I cross a desert and like so many people dying to be free and risking their lives, and they still don't get to be free no matter what. And these people in this free world, and they are so spoiled and telling about how great this oppression is. Then if that's that great and desirable, please go, and can we bring a North Korean instead? And that's like the thing. Like I see so many crazy Leninists and Maoists and Marxists and telling me how great North Korea is and how much better than America, and how America is worse than North Korea. And it's like, if it's that worse, why don't you just please go to North Korea?
Sure. I think you probably face a lot of backlash from those types of people, as well as probably propagandists that are trying to push North Korean regime propaganda as well as Chinese propaganda. Very similar feeling over here. I mean,
you got the same thing.
Oh yeah, it's pretty awful. I mean, mine's a bit more a difficult sell, because you can go to China for a week and you can buy into the whole thing. You're like, look at all these shiny buildings, you know. You spend a little more time there, you understand how corrupt and horrific the regime actually is. North Korea, on the other hand, it's one of those things that most people won't get a chance to go see. So a romanticized idea of that can be very dangerous. Would you, to segue into this, do you think it is ethical for a Western person or anyone from outside North Korea to travel to North Korea?
No. I mean, if the Holocaust was happening right now, would you go to concentration camp to see as a tourist and give the money to the guards? That's what they're doing right now in North Korea. There are concentration camps everywhere. People are dying not because they did something wrong, they were opposing the regime, or because their father did something wrong. Then 3 generations of their family got persecuted and sent to prison camp. Like right now, Matt, I was talking to you right now, right? Because that I spoke out, that Kim Jong-un sent all 3 generations of my family back in North Korea from my father's side, and they all got disappeared. I don't know if they've been executed or sent to prison camp. So even after they escape, I'm not free. And they haunt us like this till the end of this earth. That's what Kim Jong-il said. Like, we are going to chase them till the end of this earth and punish them. That's why it's not ethical to go to North Korea as a tourist, even though they say, I'm going to be such a nice Westerner, show this waitress and guys that I'm so cool. And like those people are the ones who are benefited by this system. They are not the ones who is in the concentration camps in the countryside are being starved.
No, that's why this is such an important message. I mean, I had that impression. It's like you have this Western fantasy that you're going to go over there and support the local people, but you're not supporting the local people.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
The local people, unfortunately, they don't benefit from tourism dollars.
No.
It's the regime getting foreign currency.
Yeah, and they use that money to build more concentration camps.
Right.
And build more nukes. That's what they're spending their money for.
This guy actually, he just joined. He's very interested in you because he is a Korean adoptee in America.
Okay.
I think probably from South Korea. He says, I'm greatly concerned with South Korea's relationship with the USA and China. What is your future outlook on these relationships? I sadly see South Korea becoming more like China / North Korea and less like the US. Their press freedom was downgraded from free to mostly free in 2011, and their current president doesn't seem likely to bring reunification on any terms but North Korean terms. What do you think of South Korea's reluctance to join the Quad alliance?
I mean, I think this is the trend that we are seeing, not even in South Korea, only it's in the world, that we are all going back again to trying these extreme left ideas of Marxism and communism. You know, it's happening in America, right? It's happening in Europe, like literally South America, anywhere in this world, and that is the same thing in South Korea. They are going back to abandon this capitalism freedom that gave us our prosperity, and try out something that we tried in the past and failed every time we tried.
Why? Just like on a personal level, why do you think this is happening globally right now?
In a way, I think that, you know, the communists, this ideology is so evil, and they simplify things so well, right? They like make the way of their explaining things about the world is so simple, right? All about like systemic racism is corrupting this country, about the patriarchy of social construction, all of these things is something very one narrative they got. So these young people growing up this new world that we learn like not to know what's moral and immoral. Like there's just such a nothing. They say let's be tolerant of everything, but otherwise, if we don't be like them, and same is the same they say they don't accept us. So I think it's another thing is that you can do this when you are prosperous, right? In the prosperity, people can think of other things. And it's some kind of chaos happening that I see in South Korea and America has been wealthy for some time. I think the young generation are forgetting about the hard times, and they expect the world to be easy, the life to be easy. And they see some little challenge and they don't know how to overcome it, and then started blaming the system.
Sure.
And
do you think that maybe it has to do with just a very impatient culture, in that American democracy is like steering a ship? It takes a long time to steer a ship in a different direction.
Yeah.
That's because there are checks and balances. There's an intricate system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think maybe a younger generation of people that have bought into this idea are just very impatient and want to see very quick changes? And that's what happens with like the Chinese regime, right? They'll build a huge road network overnight. It's terrible quality and buildings are going to fall down, but they got it done the next day. Do you think that might have something to do with it?
No, but the young people, what they see is not just building infrastructure or something quick. They actually want to rewrite the constitution. They want to make free education, free healthcare. They want to make everything free and no one takes responsibility.
Right.
They somehow want the government to become their like master and decide every aspect of their life, and they don't want to be responsible for the hardship of life. Life is so hard despite whatever it is, right? Despite you're a billionaire or like anything, penniless, life is tough for anyone.
Sure.
And I think they just don't want to accept that. They just want like, what was that book, like Brave New World?
Right.
And that's like when I was thinking like, this is what they want. They just want to get some peers from the government. They don't want to really search for the real meaning of life and none of that. They just want to get an easy pass and everything free. And how did that work? It's nothing is free in this world.
No.
And every time when you try this idea that government comes and fixing everything for us, it took us to the disastrous outcome.
Sure. I mean, I'm boggled, and I think I actually try to delude and trick myself into thinking people don't really think like this, because I really don't want to believe it. I truly don't want to believe that. At the end of the day, though, I think people have to look at regimes like in China and North Korea. They look at them like a socialist paradise where there's a granddaddy government taking care of you. But guess what? They don't. There's no social programs in China.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. America's much more socialist as it is today than China is today. And I guarantee North Korea.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a social welfare, why would I have been escaping and being sold as a 13-year-old girl? No way would I have done that. So they think like, trying this idea of like socialism is going to give us that equality that we are looking for.
Right.
And nobody's equal when we are born. We're born with different IQ, different family, different vision. Like they are looking for the equality in the outcomes. That is impossible.
Sure.
Like equal opportunity is fine. We can try for that. But they want us to be equal in every single thing. And that's what North Korea tried. And now look at them. They got 50 different classes.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, they talk about like the inequality in America. It's like you have no idea what inequality looks like. Look at Kim Jong-un. Like he got pleasure squad.
Right.
They like raise these girls since they are child and make the girls to become a gift to these men.
To all the viewers, I recommend they check out your video on that. It's actually disgusting, but also very eye-opening. The thing is, yes, I mean, this is going to end up turning into this huge circular conversation about this, but like it boggles my mind because really you're talking about regimes that have collapsed into caste systems. It's the same in China. There's no person driving around in a Mercedes that hangs out with a peasant that makes $50 a month in the countryside.
No. Yeah.
It's the most divided society in my mind. Obviously, I've never been to North Korea. It sounds even worse.
Oh,
right?
yeah. It's
the
like
schism.
they're gods. Like literally, when someone meets the Kim Jong-il or Kim Il-sung, like Kim Jong-il, right? Any one of those Kim, you are like they are treated equally like 영접자. It's like you have seen the son of this universe, so you are protected for the rest of your life.
Right.
So that's how mystified and how glorified the Kims are. And here I saw those photos of like presidents like a high five with somebody who's sweeping the floor. I mean, like in North Korean culture, if you sweep the floor, you will never get to see your leader of your country.
Right.
So it's like this is the most equal society I've ever been to, and people think this is the most unequal like society they think it exists.
Right. I think you said something really important when you said in free countries, in developed countries, you have the luxury to talk about things. You have the luxury to have the idea, a differing idea than what's the norm, right? You also have the opportunity to fight for equality and all of these things, whether they be perceived realities or like actually social problems. You have the ability and luxury to talk about those things. Whereas in authoritarian regimes, those rights have been stripped from you. So you end up in a much less equal, much less the socialist paradise that you've come to the conclusion of in your head. But do you think maybe those people are just using the North Korean example as like as their own propaganda, right? Maybe they don't believe it works, but it's like this glorious propaganda they come up in their head, and then America can do a better version of that.
Yeah. They say like in North Korea there are no taxes, free education, free healthcare, and like when I was going to in the hospital at like right before my escape, they don't have X-rays. All those like free healthcare they talk about, right? They don't have anything. They don't even have running electricity, running water, none. The nurse injects everyone in the hospital with 1 needle. They don't even wash. They just inject with everyone with 1 needle. They use beer bottles as drops. And they were cutting off my belly that afternoon. They thought I had appendix. They didn't even use any anesthesia. And I had to go buy. My mom had to go buy penicillin in the black market. The hospital didn't provide that. And my friends who were cut off their legs in the train while they were picking up cords as a child, they're just sewing his leg bones while no anesthesia. This is like free healthcare they were looking for.
Sure.
And yeah. Oh my god, so this is like when they're talking, I mean, if there is a hair that, whenever I was reading about the Bible, like there is a hair that God describes, like I know how the hair looks like, and that is North Korea. You don't need to go far away even to after death to go to hair and see what it looks like. It's like right there in North Korea. So people don't die from cancer in North Korea. People don't die from like any other thing. They just die from infection and starvation, like fever.
How is religion treated on just right over the border? Like, are people religious over in North Korea, other than the Juche, Kim Jong?
No, you'll be executed if you read the Bible. And you'll be executed if you watch porn.
Right.
So that in North Korea is a religion. They copy the Bible. So they copied, Kim Il-sung, saying that Kim Il-sung is our first God. He loved us so much, he gave us his son Kim Jong-il, which is Jesus Christ. And his body dies, but his spirit is with us forever and ever. So when you look at these dictatorship countries, they often copy Bibles or like other religions. So when you are being a god, they don't need the logic to explain to us. They don't need the evidence to show us, right? Like if they are God, like I don't have to challenge you. How can you show up in the east and the west 1 second? How can you move the mountains?
Sure.
But they can apparently in the books.
Right.
So faith is like you believe it without seeing the evidence.
So it's the same thing, but with the Kims, basically.
Yeah, so exactly the Christian Bible they copied, and they just inserted the different names, and the concept is exactly the same. Therefore, they don't want us to know real, true religion.
Sure.
And then people who actually get the Bible or like praying, they get like executed with 3 generations of their family members sent to prison camps.
That's horrific.
Yeah, I mean, this is so-called socialist paradise that people worship.
Sure. We keep going back to that. I do want to drive that point home. I mean, I was inspired after watching your channel simply because it's such a good example for people to be uninspired by what this could potentially look like. You know what I mean? Like it's an incredibly important message. That being said, just to play devil's advocate, is there anything that North Korean media says that is correct about the West?
Correct about the West? I think I cannot really think of one, but I think I mean they were saying like the Western world was corrupt, capitalistic, evil monsters living in, and this was most benevolent people I've ever met, the least racist, most inclusive, and compassionate and charitable people that I've ever met. And there's no such a concept in North Korea as a volunteer. And when I word like volunteer word, it's like I was confused. Like, what do you mean volunteers? Like, these people go help other people not getting paid for free. And those kind of altruistic behavior never exists in North Korea.
Sure.
So nothing about the Western society that North Korea described to us was true
Right.
at all.
Okay, so it's simply just nothing is true.
Nothing was true, no.
Right.
And by the way, like they were saying, like white people like you, Americans who has like big nose and green eyes, were like cold-blooded like snakes. So I did not know you guys were like
Depending on
humans
the
like
day,
us.
I mean, you never know. That's funny though. That's really interesting. This is a pretty dour end to the video. But is there anything that you would like to share with my audience? I'd love to do this again sometime as well. By the way, I mean I could talk to you for hours. Is there anything you want to throw in there? Your message, anything you want to promote?
I guess I think the fact that I think this is such a defining moment even to Americans and the people who have been living in freedom and democratic countries, that I think people don't often realize how fragile freedom is and how quickly this thing can go away, right? Think about North Korea. It took only like one generation to make North Korea into George Orwell's 1984.
Sure.
And in our lifetime, that any country can live our freedom.
Right.
And I think that's what I think some Americans are taking for granted, that they were always saying like when I said like freedom is not free, like I paid the price, and they think it's such a cliche thing to say. But people, when even in America, they didn't get it for free. Our ancestors paid for it.
Sure.
And I think it's our time to also protect it. And I think we just in this all together. I think our quest as a human beings to be free is like that's our like end of destination, right?
Right.
And I'm really afraid that if Americans' freedom collapses, that it will be last chance for humanity to be ever free again.
Okay.
Because who is gonna deal with China? Literally, nobody has a capability right now in this world to deal with China and stop this aggression from this Communist Party. And I really hope that America stands strong. So this is a beacon of hope for humanity. Like it or not, it is. And I think we do have the responsibility to keep this freedom in this world for individuals.
Thank you for that message. That's fantastic. I would 100% agree.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And it was so lovely meeting you.
It was lovely meeting you. What's the name of your book so that people can check it out?
It's called In Order to Live.
Okay, I'll pop a link down below. And your YouTube channel, they can find you by name, right?
Yes, it's like Voice of North Korea by Yeonmi Park.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll pop down all the links in the description. And also, everybody out there, check out Conquering Northern China, where we skirted the border and met ethnic Korean people within China and got a glimpse into North Korea. So this all ties together, kind of, which is awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and I really, really appreciate it.